Baruch Hashem.
Good, Baruch Hashem. Okay, so this week we're in Parshas Shlach and Chutz La'aretz outside of Eretz Yisrael, and we're also in Parshas Korach inside Eretz Yisrael. So a week ahead. Chukas Balak, I think next week is when we change over. We meet together, the two Eretz Yisrael and Chutz La'aretz. Maybe we should meet also physically as well. All Klal Yisrael and Eretz Yisrael.
Oh, that'd be cool.
That'd be amazing. Yeah. So this week we have also this Shabbos turns out to be the 28th of Sivan, which the 28th of Sivan is the Yortzeit of, sorry, not the Yortzeit, the day that the Rebbe and the Rebbe and his wife, Rebbetzin Chaim Musya, made their way to the United States. That means they were in Europe during the war, and they were in France, and then they made it to the south of France, to Marseille, and they finally, I think, they boarded the vessel from Portugal onto the United States, and they arrived in the United States on the 28th of Sivan in the year Taf Shin Aleph, which is 1941. So in 1941, the Rebbe made his way. He landed in the United States, and with him, of course, the Rebbetzin, the Friedrich Rebbe was already there. Before in Taf Shin, the Friedrich Rebbe came in Adar of Taf Shin of 1940, and in Chassidim, and it's accepted that from when the Rebbe came to the United States is what we say is when Chassidus and the idea of Yafutza Maneseka Futza, of the well springs of Chassidus should spread outside, reach what we know as Chatzi Kader Tachnan, the bottom half of the globe, because the top half of the globe was where the Matan Torah was. Matan Torah was on our side, meaning when I say our side, I mean the Eretz Yisrael. So that's if you're looking at Eretz Yisrael as the highest point in the world, so the bottom half of the world is what's known as the United States and the Americas. So the Torah wasn't given there, because Torah was given, in the Matan Torah was on the Chatzi Kader Elyon, on the upper part of the globe, and so too is the teachings of Chassidus. The teachings of Chassidus, which started by the Holy Baal Shem Tov, by the Rebbe Shimon Hey Stacy, started by the Holy Baal Shem Tov, and by his students afterwards, the Holy Maggid the Mizrich, and then of course the Alter Rebbe started Parsha Chassidus Chabad. So the teachings of Chassidus and the message that the Moshiach told the Baal Shem Tov, that when is the master going to come? When is Moshiach going to come? When the wellsprings of Chassidus overflow, the actual springs themselves go outside to the world. That started off on the Chatzi Kader Elyon, on the upper part of the globe. And when did the teachings of Chassidus and really the teachings of Torah start? Was around the wartime, is when today K'nai Nahara, B'li Ayin Hara, where Ruba de, the largest Jewish community, especially outside of Eretz Yisrael, is in the United States, and so it's a haven, and we're very grateful. And of course, we're celebrating 250 years of the founding of the United States. It's something we have a shevach vayda. We're very grateful to the Eibishter for finding a home for Klal Yisrael and the Jewish people in Galus, in the Medina Shlach Chesed, like the United States. And so then started, of course, when the Jewish people come, then you have to also, as through our history, is Torah has to come. The idea is not just that we find physical refuge, but Torah has to find a home. And it's not that Torah follows the people. The people of Yehuda Shalach Lefanav, the people move on because it's time for Torah to move to different places. And it's time for Torah to continue going out to the world. And with Torah, of course, is the teachings of the inner secrets of Torah, which is Chassidus. The inner teachings of Chassidus is the Manesecha, the wellsprings of the Baal Shem Tov. and the Alter Rebbe and the Maggid. So when the Rebbe, who's our Rebbe, and is our leader for the past from 1950, so the past 76 years is comes to the United States, and the idea of Yefutz Manusecha Chutza takes a total new level, as it did out of the United States, out of the Rebbe's headquarters in 770, where shluchim were sent all over the world in spreading the teachings of Chassidus and Darkei Chassidus, the ways of Chassidus, and helping and spreading Yiddishkeit all together. It's all one. That started in 1941 on Chavches Sivan. So this is the next step towards Moshiach, because the Baal Shem Tov was told by Moshiach that the condition for the Moshiach to come is l'chshei Yefutz Manusecha Chutza. So now that we've reached another stage, another level of chutza, another level of taking the wellsprings out, is getting us closer to Mashiach. And the Rebbe, of course, the Friedrich Rebbe started with an announcement in 1944, L'alta l'tshuva, l'alta geula, that when we're going to do tshuva, we're going to have geula. And the Rebbe says, Hine Mashiach ba. And then the Rebbe proclaimed in 1990, 91, that Mashiach is mamish here. We have to just open our eyes, and we're going to see the geula. So these are mamish getting us closer to the final announcement of that Navi of Elijah the prophet coming to announce the coming of Mashiach. So what does this all have to do with our Parsha class, which is Parshas Shlach? Parshas Shlach was a time of when the Jewish people were ready to go into Eretz Yisrael. It says Ad Yavar Amcha Hashem Ad Yavar Am Zu Kanisa. It says Ad Yavar Amcha Hashem is that the first wave, the first entrance into Eretz Yisrael, which was at the end, went in through Joshua on the 10th of Nisan, when after the 40 years in the desert. So that's the first time we entered the land. And the Gemara brings and teaches us in Sota and other places that the Avraham Hashem 2 times, that there was going to be that the second time the Jewish people came into the land after the destruction of the first temple and after the Galus Bavel was also supposed to be as miraculous as it was when they came with Joshua. But because of the sin, it didn't happen. So there's a lot of questions on that Gemara. Obviously, if there was no sin, there would be no Churban, there would be no destruction. But like the Rebbe says, in the third major entrance into Eretz Yisrael is with Mashiach Tzidkenu. So this is the same idea of Shlach, where we're sending out spies, finding out the last things that have to be tikkunim, last things we have to know to spy out and to become clear, and to give ourselves the knowledge of what we have to do to be able to go into Eretz Yisrael. So the first time had the spies not sinned, so the entry into Eretz Yisrael at the point then with Moshe Rabbeinu would have been on a totally different level. And the idea is really that the Gula Amitis Vashlema, the actual, it would be a one-time entry with Eretz Yisrael. Moshe Rabbeinu said to God in Veschanan, Evernov Eretz Haaretz, that let me go into the land. Had Moshe Rabbeinu gone into the land and Moshe taken us into the land, it would have been a totally different kind of entry into Eretz Yisrael. Our relationship to Eretz Yisrael would have been different, on a much higher level, much more revealed level. Like I could say, the Moshe would give us the riyah, the visual, the clarity of understanding what Eretz Yisrael really is, instead of having B'ata Shema Yisrael that we have to hear, and hearing is not the same as seeing. So how did we not sin with the spies, and then the other sins that came before and afterwards? Then we would have entered the land with Moshe Rabbeinu on the whole nother level, and everything would have been different. So what happened? So what happened? The idea that we need what's it mean? What is the Baal Shem Tov asking? What is the Baal Shem Tov is not asking just that there should be, which is also an amazing thing, that there should be Chassidim and Jewish people walking in the streets. Hey, Jeremy, should be walking in the streets, and that itself, just by a chassid, like the Rebbe said more than once, just a chassid walking in the street with yamas and yarmulke and tzitzis, itself brings awareness of kedusha, of awe, of light to the world. But the idea is that there should be Torah in the world, and the Torah should make itself into the world as it is, and that's why it's a chiddush. What's the chiddush that the Rebbe came to the bottom half of the globe? The idea is that the bottom half of the globe that didn't have, like something is further away, didn't have the revelation of Matan Torah, and didn't have the revelation of the teachings of Chassidus up until that point on a proper scale, is that the world was more grub. The bottom half of the world was more grub, was more coarse, was more thick, full of geshem, of gashmias, of physicality, and materialistic attitude and ideas. Although there was great vision and great sacrifice to build a place like the United States, to make a place of freedom for all people and all religions. But at the end of the day, Torah, the purpose is that Torah should be, these ideas should be permeated with Torah. So the idea is that Torah should permeate the world. And this is what the Meraglim didn't want. It means not that the Meraglim had anything against going out there and making the world a holy place. They weren't against making the world a holy place. They saw it as a struggle that wasn't achievable. They said that to go out to the world, a place that's of 31 kings, a place of the 7 nations, a place like Eretz Yisrael, that they said Eretz Acheles Yishver. It's a place that they're going to eat you up alive. If you think that you could go to these places, to a place like Eretz Yisrael, and make Eretz Yisrael into a Makom Kedusha, hey, Dr. Susan, a Makom Kedusha, that you have to know it's not possible. Eretz Acheles Yishver. You'll be eaten up alive. Eretz Yisrael will eat you up alive. It's not possible. It's not possible. You stay in the desert. Stay in the yeshiva. Stay in the places that you know holiness. Stay in the protected spaces of godliness. It's not possible to go and integrate into the world and turn the world, to transform the world into a place of Kedusha. They're giants, they're strong. The fruit are strong. The Gashmis is strong. Everything is strong. It's not you're gonna fall victim to it. They came back and they were anshe shame. These were not people that, when we talk about the wickedness of the spies, and like we learned in Gemara Sanhedrin, that Dara Midbar or the Meraglim Elam Chelik Elam Haba. These were people. The Torah testifies they were Rishayim, they were wicked because they weren't bottled to Moshe. They didn't give themselves over to Moshe Rabbeinu. But they didn't come in and say that we're against Torah mitzvahs, per se. They were saying they didn't believe Torah mitzvahs could be effective and that we could keep Torah mitzvahs in this environment. It's too difficult. They had fear. They were intimidated. They were intimidated what they saw in Eretz Yisrael. They were intimidated what they saw, but the fear they felt of what's going to happen if we try to affect Eretz Canaan and turn it into Eretz Yisrael. That Eretz Yisrael, you're going to get eaten up. You're not going to be accomplishing. And their mistake and their what we call them wicked for is because they didn't know and they didn't want to subscribe that Moshe Rabbeinu didn't ask them for their personal opinions. Moshe Rabbeinu asked them to spy out and find out what the situation is. So like the Rebbe says, the first question is, we're going to go to war anyways. It's not about the reward. It's about we have to conquer the land. You have to look at the job. It's not about when a person's, a lot of times when a person goes out to venture. So most people, and is the rational way of doing it, is most people go out and say, what are we fighting for? What's in it for us? Let's say we win. What happens now? What did we win? And what are the costs to win? And what's the reward? Is the reward worth the cost? Is the investment worth the return? Right? We invest energy. What are we getting for it? What's in it for us? So Moshe Rabbeinu said, I didn't ask you for an evaluation of the investment and return. I asked you, how do we invest our energy? How do we spy out the ways we could go do it? I didn't ask you if it's a good idea. This is what Hashem wants. This is how Moshiach is going to come. Moshiach is not going to come. The idea of Dir B'Tachtonim, that the purpose of creation is not that you should live in a desert. That's not why God created the world. God didn't have this great inspiring idea that says, I'm going to bring a people and keep them in the desert. And they're going to live isolated, like Bedouins, around the Mishkan, with an enclosure of clouds, man coming from heaven and learning Torah. That's not what inspired creation, because that's an angel-like existence. And for angels, he has more holy things. If God wanted ideas of holiness, ideas of just good without struggle, without trying to transform something, so that he could do that, he has in heaven also. That God could have kept the world, the spiritual world, in heaven. He could have had angels. He has angels, gedudim, right? Tens of thousands of regiments of angels that are serving him and bowing to him, and have a fire and a passion for God on a much higher scale than any human can achieve. So as far as holiness goes, Kaddish, holiness as far as being, but even being just bowing to God from a space of holiness, that's the world of angels. God, that's not what inspired creation. God wanted creation. He wanted that there should be a world with all its challenges, with the threat of Eretz Echeles Yisrael, with the fearful, intimidating images, with the giants of people that you feel like a grasshopper, right? The people felt like grasshoppers. But Kalev says, Sar Tzilim, that this is all imaginary. This is fake news. This is not real intimidation. This is just a mirage for Bechira Chavshis, for free choice. But Toiva Arz Ma'id. The land is very good. You want to reach your true Ma'id. You want to reach your true potential. You want to reach your true abilities. It's going to be going to Eretz Yisrael. That's the whole point. It's not that they were arguing on a yes or no. They were arguing about a bigger idea. We're not here to survive. We're here to conquer. It's to conquer the land. Make the land into a place of holiness. Make the world into a place of godliness. To interact in the world, to be in the world. We always say, learned this many times, that the man that fell down from heaven was not possible to fall. It never said it could. If the Jewish people would have went through Turkey, they could have had man in Turkey. If the Jewish people would go through Iran, they would have had man in Iran. They could have gone through Greece and taken boats, they would also have man. There's only one place the man couldn't fall, and that's in Eretz Yisrael. Why? Because Eretz Yisrael is Eretz in the Sheves. That's where you have to, that's where you have to work the land. So it's not a question they had a fundamental difference of how they understood things. And what was the difference? The difference was that they were basing around their understanding. Kalev and Yeshua were bottled to Moshe. They didn't ask any questions. Kalev and Yeshua says, if Moshe Rabbeinu says, this is what we have to do, this is what we have to do, there's nothing else. It's not Ein lanu ela divrei ben Amram. All we have is what Moshe told us, right? What does Kalev say? Is this all that Ben Amram did? You're questioning Moshe Rabbeinu. You're questioning Moshe Rabbeinu. He split the sea. He took us out of Egypt. We heard him, God say, Moshe Alei, go up to the mountain. We have to be Anshe Moshe. We have to do what Moshe tells us to do. It's not our place to understand and make a conclusion. We have to use our talents and our understanding to know how to do what Moshe wants from us. But to question Moshe, that's not our job. If they bottle to Moshe, you have to be Anshe Moshe. And they weren't ready to do that. They were questioning if the mission was a mission, not how to do the job. But who says that who says we should do the job at all? And they were coming from a perspective of Torah. Right? They weren't coming from a perspective saying we want to eat cheeseburgers in the desert and we want to play golf. It's much better environment for golf will be if we make open golf courses in the desert, in the Sinai desert. They wanted to learn Torah. They wanted to open yeshivas. They wanted koilulim. They just didn't want to have anything to do with what Moshe wanted them to do. They thought that's all that they thought that's life. Life is just to sit in the tents learning the Torah the whole time. They didn't want to go out to the world. They didn't want to be threatened by anything that was intimidating to them. So therefore, when they come back, it says the Gemara. There's an amazing thing we spoke about this before also, that the Gemara talks about. The Gemara asks a question. The Gemara says that it says that Kalev went from the language of the verse. It's clear that Kalev himself went to Hebron. The Jewish people came through the whole land of Eretz Yisrael. God was compassionate, and he made sure that the mission took only 40 days, because he knew the punishment would be a day in the desert for a year in the desert for each day. So it shouldn't take even a group of just 12 spies, and maybe they were strong and young. It's still 12 days, 40 days is from the middle of the desert to make it and check out the whole Eretz Yisrael. 40 days is very fast. And they went up north, and they went south, and they went here, they went there, they were everywhere. And they didn't have the highways we have today, they didn't have the cars, they didn't have the more vehicles, they weren't traveling by helicopter. So God made Kvitzis Haderach, he made a miracle. Because if they would go regular pace, it would take them much longer to spy out the land from when they left until they came back. But the Gemara said, the pasuk says they went to Hebron. Hebron, who's in Hebron? Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. Sarah, Rivka, Leah, Rachel, the place of the fathers, the place of the mothers. And it says that he came singular, only Kalev came there. And the Gemara says, why? Why did Kalev go alone? Kalev broke off from the spies. He left the spies. He broke off from the camp, and he made his way to Hebron. It's Gemara in Sota. He made his way to Hebron, and he said to Moshe. He went to the office, and he davened that they should protect him from the Atzis Meraglim. He shouldn't fall. Because the narrative is very strong. The narrative of the Meraglim wasn't some weak argument. He didn't need a daven that he should be protected from opening golf courses. He had to protect because they came with the flag of Torah. They came with the flag of godliness. He said it's better for a Jew to be in the desert, and he didn't want to fall victim to this narrative. And he davened to Hashem that he should stay mekusher to Moshe. He should stay connected to Moshe. And the Gemara says, so why did he go? Why didn't Yeshua go? Because Yeshua had the bracha for Moshe. In the beginning of the Parsha, it says that Moshe changes Yeshua's name from Hoshea ben Nun to Yeshua ben Nun. And the Yud represents the 10 spies, that he shouldn't fall victim to the 10 spies. So he was protected from a special prayer for Moshe. Kalev was vulnerable, and he knew he was vulnerable, and he knew what the plan was. So he ran to Hebron. He begged. The Gemara says in Sota that we're getting ready for Gimel Tammuz. We know that there's a concept. We go to the Oyel. We go to Kivrei Tzadikim. We go to the caver especially of the Nasi Adar of the Rebbe. So where's the makar of going to a Rebbe to daven? Is one of the makaris is this week's parsha. Kalev goes to the Avis, and the Gemara says the Mefarshim say, I think the Mashal says that it's brought down that the dead are not always aware of what's happening in this world. So how did they know what's happening? So Kalev, so Mashal answers, but if you tell them, then they know. So he went to tell them what's happening. He went to Kalev went. That's why the Rebbe was always very into. You have to articulate. A person you can't assume not because God doesn't know. God wants to hear you ask. You have to, when you have a question, you have to tell the story, articulate. When you articulate a story and say, "This is the situation. This is what I need, and this is the bracha I need." I always say that I saw a video, a clip of a woman who is who's a supporter or a member of the Chabad community of California. And the Shliach, of course, of California, Rabbi Kunyan, is a very well-known person, one of the first Shluchim, and the first Shluchim, I think, to open a Chabad house and anywhere in the world. He's the first Chabad house was in UCLA, and was opened by Rabbi Kunyan. The Rebbe was very, very, very familiar with Rabbi Kunyan, and the Rebbe had many, many letters and private audiences with Rabbi Kunyan. So he knew who he was. He knew his name. He knew his full name. He knew his mother's name. But when this woman comes by to ask the Rebbe for bracha at dollars, there's a video, and she says she wants to ask the bracha for Rabbi Kunyan. The Rebbe says, "What's his name?" And she starts saying, "Oh, Rabbi Baruch Kunyan." He goes, "No, what's his? He has another name. I think it's Baruch Shlomo. You have to say his full name." And the Rebbe says, "What's his mother's name?" So she's like, the Rebbe's helping her say the mother's name because the Rebbe, of course, knew it. But so what was the Rebbe playing a game? If the Rebbe knows his name, why is he making her ask it? Because that's the point. You have to ask, even if the Rebbe knows Baruch Shlomo and knows his mother's name. But when you're coming to ask a bracha from someone, you have to inform them everything. You have to say the name and you have to say the mother's name. That's why we write over and over and over again. We write our names and our mother's name. You can't say, "Well, God knows who I am. Why do I have to say my mother's name?" Because you have to articulate things. So Kalev, the Gemara says, Rasha says that Kalev went to the Kivri, obviously told the story to the fathers and the mothers. He said, listen, I'm vulnerable. There's a narrative out there that's not that they don't want to give over, be mevatel, nullify themselves to Moshe Rabbeinu. So so he davened that he should stay a chassid, he should stay mekusha. And of course, we know the end of the story of this week's parsha, that the parsha continues with the punishment, unfortunately, that happened. The Jewish people were told they can't go into the land. They cried and they complained. They said that our children are going to die. How can we send our children here? How can we send our children there? They're going to be vulnerable. This is a horrible idea. He complained to Moshe. Moshe says, you're right. You're not going to the land. Your children will go to the land. You won't go to the land. This is one of the few times where actually the punishment happened. Usually a lot of times there's a punishment and then they walk back the punishment. They didn't die right away, but they didn't go to the land. They didn't want to go to the land. They didn't go to the land. They said, we don't want to go to the land, so they didn't go to the land. The only people who went to the land are the people who weren't involved in this rebellion against Hashem. And the Gemara actually teaches us, the Rashi brings it down in Parshas Pinchas, that the women weren't part of the decree. The women didn't subscribe to this whole thing. Their husbands came in crying about the security of their wives and their kids. The women said, I don't know what you're talking about. Moshe Rabbeinu says, we're going to the land, we're going to the land. They had no questions. They never doubted Moshe. The pasuk says, these are the people. There was no people that rebelled against Hashem. The Rashi says, ish, not isha. There was never a decree against the woman. The woman entered the land. It doesn't say no woman died in the desert, but there was no decree against the women, that any woman past the age of 20 couldn't go in. There was no decree. They weren't part of the decree. The woman never had anything bad about Eretz Yisrael. The men had this whole idea, this whole imaginary fear. And like the Alter Rebbe brings down in Tanya, that it all came from the Yetzer Hara. What's the proof? The proof was that as soon as Moshe Rabbeinu says they can't go to the land, he says, we want to go to the land. And they grabbed the Aron and they ran to Eretz Yisrael. They tried to run to Eretz Yisrael and they were thrown back by the enemies. Moshe says, you're not going to be, you won't be successful. You're not going with the power of God. You're not going to the land, you're punished. So the Alter Rebbe writes what happened. Yesterday they said they cried, they don't want to go to the land. And Moshe said, so you're not going to the land. They should have been happy. Instead, then the next morning they woke up and they cried and they grabbed the Aron and he says, we want to go to the land. We want the land now. So the Alter Rebbe asked Tanya, what changed? Moshe didn't tell them any news. There was no miracles that made them, there was nothing what was the information that changed? Because the whole thing was fake. It was just the Yetzer Hara. And as soon as they realized it was just the Yetzer Hara, then their Nefesh Elokis was revealed. They said, we want to go in. Moshe says, you're not going to go in. The punishment's already decreed. So there's a lot of, the message of this parsha is, and like the continuation of the parsha is, we have a lot of laws, Kisavo El Aretz. We learn laws of Challah. We learn a lot of special halachas where there's an encouragement for going to Eretz Yisrael. There's an encouragement for what we have to achieve. But we have to, the main thing is we have to be bottled to Moshe Rabbeinu. Then that's very much connected, getting ready for the month of Tammuz. When we're celebrating now, going into from Gimel Tammuz, Tavshin and Dalet, it's 32, going to the 33rd year since the Rebbe's passing. And we have to know that the Rebbe's message still lives strong, and the Rebbe is still guiding us, and the Rebbe is telling us what we have to do, and we can't be fearful. And especially now in these last moments before Moshiach comes, that Moshiach is going to come, and it can be done. We don't have to be intimidated. We don't have to fall back. We have to know that we have to actually, on the contrary, push forward. This is not the time to get lazy. It's not the time to drop the ball. Now is the time someone tells me, I was walking home with someone, we were learning the Gemara last week of the Meraglim in the old city of Yerushalayim. So someone was walking back with me. He said, we have to run out the clock. We don't have to run out the clock. Running out the clock is not a strategy. We're not running out the clock. We have to be proactive. Every play counts. Every minute counts. We're not trying to beat the clock. We have to push forward until Moshiach comes. And again, this connects us back to the 28th of Sivan, the Chavcha Sivan, the day the Rebbe came. The Rebbe came to the United States of America. We have a lot of times in life things that we think we know why they're happening, or where we end up, or why we're going places. And that's all from our perspective. but from Sibas HaSibas, from God's bigger picture. God is moving things around. Things are constant. It happened in our history. The famous story that there was four great Gedolei Yisrael of Bavel, from the big yeshivas by the Gaonim, that went on a trip to go collect money for the yeshivas in Bavel. So they traveled. There was Jewish communities then in North Africa, in Spain, in certain places of Europe, maybe Rome. So they wanted to collect money for the yeshivas back in Bavel, in Narda or Pumbedisa, and they were taken captive by pirates, and they were sold. These four great giants were sold to four communities across Northern Africa and places of Europe. And it was all part of God's big plan, because what happened was they were sold, so they became the leaders of those places. And because of that, we had the great yeshivas in North Africa. The Rif was a student of these great people, and the great yeshivas of Spain, and the great, I think another one was in Italy. So they were taken to they started off in great communities. So seemingly what looked bad ended up being a hatzalah. It saved. And so too in the United States. The Rebbe came to the United States of America. He didn't want to come to the United States of America. Friedrich Rebbe didn't want to come to the United States of America. Unfortunately, if you look at the picture from our perspective, Hitler came and he wanted to kill all the Jews, and the Jews were running away from Europe. But that's the way we see it. We're not belittling Chas v'Shalom anything this big Russia did and wanted to do. He was a Russia. He wasn't part of. He wasn't thinking in God's minds. He was thinking as a horrible person. But God at Sibas HaSibas had it so that the Friedrich Rebbe comes to America, and then the Rebbe comes to America in Pinchas Sivan, Tavshin Aleph, 85 years ago, going to 85 years, is because this is, like the Rebbe says, this is the next step to Moshiach. We're not going away. We're going forward. We're not running out the clock, then hiding out in the United States until Moshiach comes. We're going forward. This is the next stage of Yefutza and Ezachachutza. And then from in 1941, it started off with small communities across the East Coast and in places like New York and Chicago, all the way till now, where Pinchas is sitting in Seattle, Washington, and Dr. Dershowitz and Dr. Susan and Jeremy. This is all a step further to Mashiach. That people are learning Chassidus all over the world. That people are learning Torah all over the world, and doing mitzvahs all over the world. This is to make the world into a place ready for Mashiach. This is all part of getting forward. So we're not running out the clock. We're being active, and therefore the message has to be that the Toiva Arts Moed Moed, the job is good, the mission is holy, and the job is achievable. But in order to achieve the job, we have to stay connected to the Rebbe. We have to stay connected to the Moshe Rabbeinu of our generation, and we have to see what does he tell us we have to do on an individual level. Each one of us is an individual. Daven, put on tefillin, keep Shabbos, keep kosher, keep family purity, tzedakah, teach another person, put on tefillin with another person, learn Torah. These are the things that we have to do. Learn the shiurim, say Tillim every day. These are the things we have to do to be Makar of Mashiach, make the world ready for Mashiach. And like Mashiach said, it's up to you. When the wellspring spread, then Mashiach is going to come. And we see that the amount of ore, the amount of light that's in the world, that if you were to take a spaceship or a picture from space, and you're able to capture the spiritual light of the world, I'm sure that the spiritual light of the world today is so much brighter and so much more spread out than it was 85 years ago before the Rebbe came to America, and more than and becoming more and more light with each coming year and each coming day. So I think from Meraimam, from his high place, he has to look down and see that the world is light and the world is ready, and it's time to send Mashiach now, that we should celebrate with the Rebbe his 85th year of coming to the United States, that from Kimitzi and Teitzi Torah, that like the Rebbe said then, that from 770, we march together with Moshiach Tzidkenu, b'mheir b'yameinu mamash. Thank you everyone for joining, and I wish everyone a good Shabbos, and a good Chodesh Tammuz, and we see each other here in Yerushalayim Kodesh b'mheir b'yameinu. Laila Tov and good Shabbos. Take care.